Devin and Morgana have been celebrating midlife love by getting married 100 times in 100 countries. They believe grown-up love gets better and more fun, especially for women. Everyone's smarter, wiser. Men are more relationship ready. And if they're not, it's obvious. Forget anything you were told about being too old or too late for love and adventure. Instead, get fresh new tips on dating, relating, and travel to exotic destinations. And best of all, call in for personal guidance, creating crazy, sexy midlife love in your life.
Doesn't whistle.
I know it doesn't whistle. Okay, hello, welcome. As we celebrate grown-up love, we are also celebrating the 1 year of our baby radio show. Crazy Sexy Midlife Love has been on the air. So we can take these off now. If you think masks are uncomfortable, try putting on little baby hats.
Right.
Yay, so this is year 2 of Crazy Sexy Midlife Love. And wouldn't you know it, we're still married. We have survived over a year of pandemic. We are both have our first shot and we'll get our second shot next week. And we're looking at where to travel in May.
There's choices.
Yeah. It was looking like Costa Rica. That might get moved around. Mexico's calling, like the world. I just want to go everywhere.
Yeah, me too.
And I was having a conversation. Oh, hello, my name is Morgana. This is my husband, Devin. We have been married. It will be 7 years next month. I think our first wedding was May 23rd, 2014. That's, I think, the only wedding date that I'm good at remembering. If it weren't for Facebook, I would have no clue when, or our BBS radio webpage. When I forget, when we got married, where I check there, because we're in the process of getting married 100 times in 100 countries to each other. Completely Devin's idea.
Indeed.
And we haven't had any weddings since 2019. So, like any reasonable woman, I'm wondering where we stand in the relationship. No weddings for a really long time.
You're married. That's the deal. Yeah.
It would be nice to get married again.
We will totally get married again.
Well, and when people ask why we do this, I know that what it does for me is the first time that we got married, I was 47 and I had never, ever been married before. I'd been in long-term relationships, but I'd never been married. And I had no idea what that meant, how that would be different than just being boyfriend and girlfriend. I was just guessing. So the first exchange of vows for me was a guessing game. And then when we got married a second time, a little over a week later, I felt like, oh, I have 13 days experience married. So I know a little bit more about what I'm saying. And as the years pass and we choose each other, knowing so much more about each other, having experienced so much together, it's especially interesting when we've just had a really big fight and we choose each other anyway. It just gets deeper and richer. So our next wedding, we will know what it's like to be married and in captivity during quarantine, during horrible challenges and loss and grief and uncertainty. And we know what it's like to stay together and choose each other through that experience. Devin, did you want to say anything?
Not really.
Okay.
But that said,
yes.
I will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, listen, at some point, all of what we're doing, this is if you're at home and you're sort of like, I don't like travel. I don't think it's worth it to travel around the world, to get married, to prove some ridiculous point. Really, why I end up doing it, and why it was my idea, and why it keeps being my idea, is because I think if it's not weddings, it should be something. There should be some special thing that a couple does in order to maintain the relationship in some sort of like a uniquely special way. And the reason why I say this is because what we do ostensibly is some kind of, it's a ritual that embodies and sort of like creates a container for the relationship. And I think every relationship needs some kind of a thing. In other words, you get married one time and all of a sudden, like if we were just to look back at our first wedding, that would just be some very distant kind of thing. It would be something that would be kind of far away, in which each passing day it gets further and further away. And so I think I think we, and I say you, I'm really talking about us, I think we need some kind of a thing that sort of reminds us on a regular basis why we chose each other, why we are fighting for each other, why we're on each other's team, why we're willing to go through difficulty and stuff. Because I think when people don't, because I speak to a lot of couples and I speak to a lot of men and women who are moving, they're not moving away, but what ends up happening is these little gaps get, all of a sudden one person fights with another person, and over a period of time, they kind of take little tiny steps away from the relationship. And it's probably unspoken, and you probably don't think about it, and you're leading each other's lives, and maybe you have kids, and maybe you don't, maybe you're taking care of family. And all of a sudden, one day you wake up and there's this chasm between the two of you. And most people don't know how to reconnect that energy. And I think the best way to not reconnect is to not separate it in the first place. And I think it's kind of one of those things. Like, to me, it would be, I'd rather not get out of shape. Like, I've been gaining and losing the same 30 pounds for 25 years. And so it's a lot easier to just simply not get out of shape. So this is sort of like, instead of having to worry about bridging the chasm, I think you just kind of start focusing on doing some kind of a thing. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, but I don't want to go to Costa Rica or to Guam in order to get married, so I can say I'm doing this little thing. Although for us, that's perfect. But I think you find something. I don't know what it is. Bring home red balloons every, fourth Tuesday. Some kind of a thing that's like your thing. And maybe it's a date night. But I think you have some sort of a thing that you create and cultivate together that's meaningful for the couple. And you go out into the universe and you keep doing it to make sure, and maybe that's like a real serious conversation. We talked with, who was it? Oliver last week. He was talking about
Oliver Marcel.
Right. So he talked about sort of like having these hard conversations. And they've gotten better at the conversations over time. And they've been married now, 20 plus years, and they've figured out how to be a strong, connected partnership. And they have business together, and they have talk shows together, and they do stuff that's meaningful for each other together. And I think that's kind of where all of that, for me, all this comes from.
And Devin is talking about last week's episode, Oliver Marcel, author of Overcoming the Man Code. And you can still catch that.
Man Laws.
Man Laws. Thank you.
Man Laws.
I always get it wrong. And he's so good. And I encourage you to catch that episode in our archives. We like to travel. I was traveling the world by choice for work, like grabbing any opportunity. Somebody was going to pay me to fly across the country to speak at their event. Oh, yes, I was there. I mean, I took a speaking gig in Oslo, Norway.
I would do that.
Well,
Wow.
For different reasons than I did. I did it because I had this fantasy of meeting a cute guy and saying, "Why, yes, Hans, I'd love to see your longboat." Didn't happen, but I had
Poor Hans is sitting in a port somewhere with a very long boat.
It was lovely traveling to all these beautiful places without the love of my life. So I kept telling the universe, I want to travel with the love of my life. So when I was on OkCupid, the free online dating app, and it's funny because I was on paid ones too. I just didn't like the matches as much. And this stranger with the username Travel Guy writes to me. He ended up being the guy that I travel the world with, the love of my life. So for us, any opportunity to travel is an easy yes, just about. But if that's not your thing, go find pretty meaningful places or new places in your own city, in your own part of the world. It doesn't have to be difficult. Some of our weddings have been really big, elaborate castles with big wedding parties. And then we had one year where it's like, oh my God, it's November and we haven't been married this year. And I'm going to Arizona for a business conference. Come on, Devin, we're going to get married in Arizona. And we ended up getting married by a twisty tree in Sedona at one of the vortexes because I didn't want to deal with people that day. I just wanted to get married to Devin, and I didn't want the hassle of human beings. So you get to make it any way you want to make it, because it's not actually about the dress or the venue or the guest list, although all of those can be fantastic and fun and beautiful. Deb and I were talking about our wedding in Slovenia recently in this 1,000-year-old fairy princess castle. It looks like a Disney princess movie come to life with the sparkling, magical, like iconic lake bled with the little island, and it looked too beautiful to be true. The whole thing. All of it, just so every little Disney princess dream I didn't think I still had came true that day. And then another day, it's just, hey, can you come out on this bridge and read the script for us? Great, we're married. It's, because it really comes down to, it isn't about anything except our relationship. And when we had that one wedding where people were booing, like weird, unbelievable, and really truly happened. They were booing when Devin was saying his vows. Like, who does that? Well, they
Apparently
do.
drunk Serbians.
Yeah. And that was when I realized that really all that matters is the relationship, is the marriage. The marriage is the prize, not the party. Have a beautiful wedding, and if you don't like the one you had, have another one. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to have a lot of people. Just go somewhere that's meaningful for you. I said this to my cousin, who was really nervous when she was getting married, that a family member was going to create drama and make it unpleasant. And my pep talk to her was, plan to have a second wedding, just the two of you, when you go on your honeymoon. This one, the big one, is for family, but the second one belongs just to you. So have a second wedding, have a third, have 100. Keep recommitting to each other as long as you're together. It means more every time. So that's the background on the 100 weddings. And I was hearing from a friend that she noticed over this year in lockdown that, in her words, everybody's getting divorced. That obviously is not our life experience. I know that Devin has been coaching some couples going through some trouble. That's why I was kind of half joking when I said at the beginning of the show, and we're still married, because you really don't know what, like, this pressure cooker of quarantine, especially when one of us is an extrovert. My husband is an extrovert, so it's been like double torture for him.
It's got to be ironic for people who are watching this. He's the extrovert because he's the one who's not talking most of the time. Please go on.
But it's true.
Please go on, introvert.
I know. Well, I've been saving it up for years of solitude, and it all comes out once a week.
Yes, it does. Please go on. I'll sit here quietly.
But you were the social butterfly who loves to go out and get with people and groups just about every day.
This has been a special hell, but it's whatever. It's what it is. That's okay.
So we were talking about when we were thinking about what we were going to talk this week, because every other week we like to alternate between bringing in a guest and then just having an episode where we're just talking, where we're taking questions, where we are taking calls if you want to call in. And I have once again forgotten the number. If our producer can type it in, I can read the number when I see it. So we were talking about, so why are some relationships crumbling under the pressure and others aren't? And if you have a question about that, the number to call in is 888-627-6008. This is a live show. If your relationship is under pressure or you have questions about relationship, getting married, working things out with the person you're with or the person you want to attract into your life, just give us a call, 888-627-6008. We are super friendly. And in the meanwhile, we're going to just keep talking until we see that we have a caller. So I was asking Devin what he thought the difference was. And what did you say, Devin?
Oh, I said that having a posse was really good.
Having a posse.
Having a
Posse
posse.
power.
So that's not, there's lots of ways to use it, but the general thing is that I think that when you have two people sitting in a room forever, or in this case, like for months and months and months on end, with only each other to deal with, at some point, one person is going to say something they probably shouldn't have. Doesn't matter if it was true, doesn't matter if they've been thinking about it all week. They're coming to this person that they're stuck in a room. It's hard not to be annoyed. It just is. And so you're seeing the same person over and over. And I think this is, of course, a microcosm of what is normally happening in a relationship. You're dealing with somebody over and over and over again. And instead of taking your feelings of confusion, sadness, frustration, whatever it is that you're feeling, instead of bringing that to the person you really want to be on your side, you bring it to another human being, another person who doesn't have to do anything with the thing. In other words,
I'm not following you at all.
I know, I can see that in the glazed over expression.
All right.
If I were to go to my wife with every feeling that I have, at some point, especially if some of the feelings I was having was about her, there's no good that's going to come from that. There's no good. At some
As
point,
demonstrated by last week.
I don't even remember what happened.
Okay.
Oh, we got into an argument about something?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So those kinds of things happen. So what do I want to do? I want to minimize that by having, and I like to call them a posse, a circle of friends that are just trusted. People who are going to listen, people who are going to call me out on my stuff, people who are going to say, dude, you just need to apologize and stop talking. I need people that are not emotional, who are not emotionally invested in my being right, who are not emotionally invested in the outcome of the argument. They're not emotionally invested in the nonsense. Really what they want me to be is happy. They want my wife to be happy, then I'm happy, and then we have a nice, happy relationship. And when we go out into the universe, there's more happiness.
You're actually bringing up I think a really important point, because I've also heard you say, like, if a woman is having trouble with her boyfriend, the worst thing to do is go and complain about it to your girlfriends. And I would say the same, a guy complaining about it to his guy friends, unless, and this is really important, unless your friends like your partner and value long-term relationship. One of the first clues that I got when dating Devin that he had long-term potential, despite him saying that he didn't believe in marriage 25 weddings ago,
Right.
is he invited me to a birthday party picnic of one of his childhood friends. And there were like 15 or 20 friends of his going back to childhood, maybe not that many, but quite a few. And they were all married. and they were all happily married, and they had been married a long time. And Devin was a bachelor, in his mid-40s. Mid-40s bachelors don't usually have almost nothing but happily married friends. And that was a clue that he respected marriage and respected commitment and respected partnership.
So could we back up?
Mhm.
Because there's
Are
a
you not
piece.
seeing the connection, or did
No,
I skip something?
I
Okay.
think you're just jumping ahead of the game.
All right.
And so the reason why Morgana made a comment 2 seconds ago about having a trusted friend to do this, but in general, what I had written a book called a short book. You can pick it up for free. It's called "Women Are Smarter Than Men" and Secrets That Every Marriage-Minded Woman Wants to Know.
It's available for free at crazysexymidlifelove.com.
Right. So, in there, I basically say that talking to your friends about, let's say you go to your friends and you say, Larry is the worst jerk face that is in the world. And that's fine, right? You should vent, complain, get it out, hear yourself discuss it, all those kinds of things. But more often than not, your friends are going to say things like, you're right, he's terrible, because they love you and they want to agree with you. And they're going to see your side because they're invested not in Larry's side, but they're invested in your side. So those friends are not necessarily going to sort out sort of your part in the problem. They're just going to say, Larry's a jerk, we hate Larry. And then what happens is the partner of Larry is going to say, oh my gosh, you're right, Larry is a terrible jerk. I need to dump Larry. More often than not, then that person will go into the next relationship doing the same things over and over and over again. So my advice is that you find somebody, that you find friends that are of opposite sex, and this is just for heterosexual relationships, but I think it would work well no matter whatever orientation the couple may happen to be, is that you find somebody that you can confide in who's not looking to date you and is willing to say, I think you're wrong. Yeah, I don't know if you have this one completely ironed out.
This is why I hired a coach. When we started dating, when I realized I started liking you, and I magically transformed from this very confident, self-possessed, powerful woman into a crazy second-guessing maniac because I liked you. So
Right.
I went out and hired a coach. I hired a guy coach so that I could go to him every week and go, Devin said this, what does this mean? And then my coach would say, it means that he likes you and you can relax. And I'd be like,
right. And so that's part of the crazy. Now, if she
Yeah.
came to me every time she was concerned that I was X, Y, and Z, over time, that would be like, what am I doing? But she had somebody to bring her crazy to. And I say that sort of like with love. That's why you have some good chosen friends who, for me, it was like, I wanted friends who had long-term relationships. So when I had relationship problems, I could say, what do I do? What's the issue here? And the issue more often than not was me and my perception of how things went. So I needed people that were willing to say that. So what Morgana's pointing out is, yes, can you have this sort of like your gal pals give their female friend advice about relationships? Sure, of course you can. But I think the important piece is to recognize that those friends are more likely to be serving you and not necessarily serving your relationship, which is a slightly different thing. And I think it's important to do that. Having somebody who's not interested in you romantically at all, maybe like an older person, something like that, who can give you really objective advice, not about, shall we say, men versus women or who's right in this particular dialogue. It's much more, how do you serve the relationship over the long term? And those are the things that I needed. So I wanted to bring, when I was crazy, and there's kind of 2 points where people are particularly crazy in relationships. That is one, when all of a sudden they realize emotionally they're invested. Like all of a sudden it's like both parties have probably said, I love you. They're highly smitten, but then there's this little piece that starts poking up through the soil, and that's vulnerability. Oh my gosh, I'm in love. This person over there can break my heart. And that's terrifying for most people, right? Now, not for everybody. I mean, some people get into relationships and it's just all hunky-dory. But for a lot of us, we have to start figuring out how to work through those kinds of things. So the first time that happens is all of a sudden, you've been 3 to 6 months, maybe you're in love, this is the person you want to be with, and it's all of a sudden, oh my God, they could take my heart and stamp on it 10,000 times. And that's horrible. The other time is really probably 2 or 3 years down the road, when the bloom of the rose has fallen off the relationship, right? Where now you're dealing with sort of like the
What's
nuts.
that like?
I don't know. I would know. I read about this in a book somewhere. So is where people start, like all of a sudden the bloom is off the rose, and now you're dealing with sort of like the reality of the person. They're still probably wonderful and have all the qualities that you loved, but it's less of a focal point. Like you just don't see them with the rose-colored glasses all the time. Now it's, oh, right, this is my mate, this is my partner. And then all of a sudden it's very easy to start going, well, look at all the problems that they are. Look who, that thing that they do. Oh, the way they comb their hair, this is terrible. Or whatever nonsense that we do. And maybe I'm downplaying it because, there's certainly very, very legitimate relationships issues that come up. But I'm talking about some sort of like general malaise kinds of things of, it's that, if you've ever watched that ridiculous show, The Bachelor, like there's this point where they're all going on romantic, one-of-a-kind dates with fireworks, and they're doing it in it's some sort of a weird
one of a kind 20 times over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the point is that they're doing this special, unique thing, and then all of a sudden now you're just waking up next to somebody every day, and now what? Now that there's not somebody literally lighting off fireworks on your behalf while some band is playing just for you and your partner.
By the way, total sidebar here, way off topic, because that's what I do. I was just reading an article about how, and this is, I think this was why I hesitated to live together. Our first year of marriage, we were still living in our own places a mile apart, which, by the way, is awesome because every night is date night. And it maintains the novelty longer. So there is the challenge, especially for women, of when you live together, the passion wears off. And that's another reason why travel and wedding vows and learning new things together in any way that you can bring in novelty into the relationship so that you don't just slump into being roommates. And there is tremendous value in the comfort and the intimacy and the commitment of being with a life partner day to day who you love and you like and you want to be with. And as Devin was talking about, like the bloom coming off the rose, you can rebloom by bringing in novelty. I think Ariel Ford brought up in her episode a couple months ago, great episode, you can find it in the archives, that if the two of you do something really scary together, not a year-long pandemic, that doesn't count, but like jumping out of a plane, rappelling off a cliff, that will reboot those passion chemicals that you can then laser focus on each other to restart your sex life. Okay, let's get back to the topic.
I don't remember what the topic
We were
was.
talking about the power of your posse and why you want to have helpful people outside the relationship.
Right. The posse is just sort of like a break from what the relationship is. It's supposed to be your friends. It's supposed to be your things. But for me, the difference between just having friends and a posse is really much more. The posse is there. The way I look at it is sort of like they're there for like a spiritual center It's not really just like, hey, let's just go out and have some fantastic drinks and shoot the crap. It's we're getting together to have sort of like a spiritual community to move ourselves forward in a useful way, right? That may sound very dull. It doesn't have to be at all. And it's certainly unofficial. I speak with a group of guys with some regularity. Sometimes we shoot the crap, and sometimes we're just like, we have very serious conversations about what do we want? How do we want to get it? And what do we want to do in order to get it? And that's, again, I think this sort of goes back to what the bigger picture is in terms of how do you make the relationship last? Part of the way you make it last is by doing things that are special within the confines of the relationship to allow it to last, right? We have to keep doing something special. The bloom coming off the rose, I think, is a very normal thing. Unless
For other people, not for us.
right, but unless you're putting forth effort into the relationship that breeds trust, contentment, a sense of being solid within the relationship, so you don't have to question the relationship. All of those things are really good for the big picture.
And fun. I think fun is really intimate too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All of those things. But the point is that part of the bloom falling off the rose is that people get back into their daily living, which is, oh, I need to go to work. Oh, I have to deal with the kids. Oh, I have to deal with a mom or dad or whomever, or somebody's sick. And you're dealing with sort of like those mundane things that slowly inch you away from sort of like this great relationship that you want to be in. And it's hard to sort of do it on your own, because I think it's sometimes really hard when you're in the thick of the thing, right? It's when you're in the thick of the thing, it's very difficult to see beyond, to have vision that's outside of it when you're in the thick of it. And part of what the posse does is help allow you to see beyond what your problems are in that moment.
I was reading an article in The Atlantic recently that I agree with and disagree with about that we are expecting too much for our relationships, that we want our partners to be all things. What I disagreed with was there seemed to be this sort of idealization of marriage in the past, where people got married for economic reasons and they didn't have to emotionally support each other. Like women were trained, and this sounds like hell, and there were a lot of very unhappy women, that you wake up, you raise the kids, you do the household, you feed and wash the kids, put them in bed before the husband gets home, by which point your hair is made up, your face is made up, you've made dinner, you have the cocktail, you have the slippers, and you're there just to serve his sexual needs, but not have any of your own. And that was the model for what wives were supposed to be for a very long time. And if they weren't happy, they were labeled hysterical and they were put involuntarily into hospitals. That is not a marriage paradigm that I strive for.
Well, that has nothing to do with
well,
it.
but I think but the point is so this guy who was being interviewed by The Atlantic was saying, well, the reason that marriages are more difficult and failing now is because we're expecting more from our partners than just coexistence. And so he was saying that it's wrong to be wanting spiritual and emotional growth and evolution with your partner. And he was saying, a partner wakes up 30 years later and says, I just feel stilted in the relationship. And I can see that being a challenge. We cannot, I think what the real point is, where I do agree with this premise, is we cannot expect our partner to be our parent, to be our everything, to fulfill every need. There are some things that Devin and I will never really be able to share because we have different tastes and we have different beliefs around certain things. So I need friends that I can share my stuff with, and he needs friends that he can share his stuff with. But we also really need to focus on what we do share together. And that actually does include I think the emotional and spiritual growth of being a partner to another human being, because it's challenging. And that's part of what we sign up for. I don't think it's enough to just play roles and not be care and not want the, I think part of, like, if I were to make a job description of partner, I like, part of my job description is I want for Devin what he wants for himself. I want him to be the man he wants to be. When he tells me that he wants to achieve something or do something, it's like something inside of me just turns on, and I want to support him in that. And when I'm blue or I'm challenged or I'm frustrated or I'm frightened, he is there to ground me and hold me and make me feel right with the world again. He doesn't make me feel, but I find that just being held in his arms kind of slows my breathing, slows my heart, and I just melt and I feel good because he's my person. And that's how, these are ways that we support each other. And, part of the mystery and challenge of being with another human being is what I need to soothe me isn't usually what he needs to soothe him. So that can be an area of tension, and then we have that chance to find out, oh, what he needs is this, so I need to adjust. And what helps us both do that is we both have our posses. So when we're both like really at it with each other, which I find so painful, and I'm sure it is for Devin too, because we invest so much into this. He's so important to me. It's excruciating when we're fighting. He has his people and I have my people. I have my girlfriends who love Devin. My girlfriends are all married for a long time. They also happen to be relationship coaches. So they know me, they love me. They can agree that Devin was wrong in this instant. And then I have my posse that I get to call and go, I broke my marriage, help. And they help me come back to love. They help me come back and repair the relationship. And that's really what the dance is. And sometimes I can't see Devin's point of view, and I need a friend who can say he's not doing it on purpose. This is who he is, and you have to decide what you want. And sometimes they say something infuriating like, he's not you. And I have to deal with that. Close. Yeah.
That must be horrifying.
It's horrifying.
I'm a different person.
Nobody warned me.
Yeah, so I did actually. I actually warned you many times, but that's okay. Sometimes we need to be reminded.
Yeah, last week we don't fight often, but when we do, it really hurts. And I had a girlfriend who said, go to the beach and walk by the water. And I went to the beach and I walked by the water for 2 hours, talking to, different shifts of my posse, so that when I came back, I felt better. I was still angry, Devin was still wrong, but I felt more solid. So I could hear him better, and we could hear each other better, and we could make up.
So did it work out?
Yeah, we're still here.
I'm Vincent Needles. Okay, so I'll assume that there was a happy ending.
Yeah, there was.
Oh, good.
I still love you. You're still my person.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you can take a little walks by the beach to reconsider my wrongness. I think that's important to do.
I had to work through the many different shades of your wrongness and work it all out.
So posses.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the important piece is that you develop one, that you find people that you can trust that aren't just going to be sort of like, shall we say, a yes man to whatever ails you. that you go out and you seek, and you find people that are going to be useful to your wellness, for your big picture kind of stuff. And I mean, I think the older we get, it's interesting, from people that I know, there's sort of like the two groups. One is like slowly but surely they've become the loner, and the other is sort of like slowly but sure they develop sort of like a community of people that supports their effort. And it doesn't necessarily have to be relationships. It could be anything. It could be coworkers who are like, they want to see you finish the thing that you started, or complete the project to the best of your ability. And a lot of it has to do with sort of like, I think, for me, it always kind of comes back down to whether or not we want to be conscious. In other words, like in the moment right now, or do we just want to react to stuff? And more often than not, the reacting to stuff is where I just want to be right. I just want you to say you were wrong, and I want you to apologize right now. And then when you do, it won't be a good enough apology.
Devin, I was wrong and I apologize.
I don't even remember.
And I love you.
I don't even remember what we were fighting
But
about.
you can bank it for the future.
All right, good. I'll put that one. I'll take it and I'll place it in my pocket and save it for a later day.
Okay.
But you get what I'm saying, right? So I think the idea is that I think a community lends itself to being present. And I think, but you have to kind of be conscious on who you're bringing your stuff to. Do you know what I mean? That's a real big one. Like I have folks that, that like, let's talk sports. And we'll have great sports conversations, but I don't necessarily want relationship awareness from. And that's fine. I don't need it from everybody. I just need it from folks that I can kind of depend upon to thoughtfully weigh what's being said, and then come back and say, yeah, you might be right on this one. And how worth it is it for you to be right?
This is really, really important if you really do want to have a long-term, successful, happy relationship, is you do need to find people who have long-term, happy, successful relationships, not self-sacrificing, not making compromises that are harmful, but like really genuinely respectful, loving partnerships. I just see this a lot with single friends who have a lot of single friends who are all kind of really down on the other sex. And that's not good soil. If that's all you have, then that becomes your normal. And we naturally and unconsciously become like the people we spend our time with. So you really want to consciously take a look at the people in your life and see, do they share your values and the values you want to have and the results you want to have? You don't need to only have happily married friends, but make sure you have enough so that you have a frame of reference for when things get rough, because it gets rough for everybody, and that you have other people who've been through it, who can help give it context and normalize a happy long-term relationship.
And by the way, going back to sort of like picking and choosing conscious people, my guess is that all of our lives we have people that are probably less conscious and aware, right? Again, people with talk sports, right? Great, big thumbs up. That doesn't mean because somebody may not be as conscious as you might want them to be over serious subjects, that they're somehow not worthwhile as people in your life. I would say the opposite is true. I mean, I think all the folks in my life serve great purposes. Like sometimes I need to not take myself seriously and I need to just chill and enjoy myself and have ridiculous conversation and just laugh and joke and not be present and not worry about the big picture consciousness. But when something as important as my relationship comes into play, I do want to be conscious in that. I want to make sure that I'm putting forth the best foundation. So when things hit the fan, which they're bound to, I have the capacity to make good choices to get out of that, out of the problem as quickly as possible, right? That's what I think part of what makes a great relationship is that you work together to find a solution and go, because you're going to go through difficult times, right? Everybody, in my opinion, as my posse would say, we take turns going through the barrel, right? It's my turn in the barrel, it's your turn in the barrel, and we each go through it. So we try to support each other when, like, again, somebody's in the thick of it. But part of that being in the thick of it is being able to laugh and joke and have a great time. But dealing with the solution is the serious piece.
Well, and what you're saying, in some relationships, we may be the teacher to somebody who is where we were a few steps behind. It's like, oh yeah, I was there. And so we're there to provide comfort and our own experience and wisdom and support. And then we also want to have people who are ahead of us. Like I like to say, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. So it's really helpful to have people who are just, better at stuff and smarter at stuff than you are for those moments when you're lost. Dead air, Devin, time for you to speak.
About what?
I don't know.
All right, so are we still talking about posses?
Yes, we
We're
are.
moving forward from posses?
Yes, we are.
So what do you do to find a posse? I think it probably is just kind of really taking stock and awareness of who are the people who are closest to you. What you can expect from them. In other words, you don't want to necessarily go towards a family member who is not going to treat you well and doesn't take you seriously, but going to them with your most secret, most vulnerable self, because you think, well, they have the best job. They're a captain of industry, so I'm going to go deal with them and offer this thing when they already have given you an extensive history of how it not works out. And they probably won't they won't kind of make sure that they got your back. And so I think you spend a few minutes with that. And I think I think probably the biggest thing is not even knowing who to call. It's being able to pick up the phone, which weighs sometimes 10,000 pounds, and dialing that person's number and getting them on the phone and telling them the truth. I think without question, part of the posse comes from, and here's one of my favorite words, and it's a big 50-cent word, which is reciprocity. And basically what it means is, if I give a little bit more, the person that I'm doing this with is likely to give a little bit more. And so you start developing this kind of relationship where, like, yes, maybe you could talk about sports, but there might be a time where it's like, okay, I'm going to push this envelope and see if this person can rise to the occasion. If they don't, that's okay. It's fine. But what's really important is that you keep sort of like, if you feel that you need to or should, that I'm going to be a little bit more open, I'm going to be a little bit more vulnerable. All of a sudden, people in my world started showing up almost out of the blue that had more of what it is that I needed in those kind of scary, difficult times.
So that's an interesting point. So let's say I'm dating a narcissist. And the more I give, the more the person takes and doesn't reciprocate. But that lets me know that this relationship is not a great relationship. But the act of giving is attracting from elsewhere, from better sources. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would ultimately argue, like, however you apply this notion of reciprocity, that either you will get what you want by doing the scarier, more vulnerable thing, and the person will either rise to that occasion or they won't. And if they don't, that's information that you get to have. And two, and perhaps even more importantly, is that you are practicing for when you're going to find the right relationship. Sometimes you have to give more than you want to, while that person is going, oh, it's scary to give more. It's scary to be vulnerable. It's scary to be present. It's scary to be conscious. All those things are like uncomfortable and weird, right? especially if it's new within a relationship. And so we're moving away from the posse thing back into the relationship thing. Like I can have a group of friends and I don't have to necessarily always have them be sort of like these conscious spiritual warriors, right? It's nice to know that I have some in case I need it. But my primary like romantic relationship, again, I think you have to have that. I think you have to. So I think that reciprocity thing in terms of sort of like vulnerability, I think those are the kinds of things you want to know in advance beforehand. And even if that relationship isn't working the way you want it to, you can kind of at least know that this is something you're striving for yourself, for your long-term happiness and wellness, and that you're practicing for the right person when that right person starts materializing. And the more aware of that you are, I think the better for the long term. And that's sort of general advice, I think, for folks at home.
There's a couple that we'll be interviewing for a future episode that I've known for 20 years now. And she was around when I was dating somebody in the early 90s who was very romantic. Mr. Grand Gesture, would take me on beautiful trips. And then he would start calling me in the middle of the night, telling me what a terrible person I am, accusing me of all sorts of outrageous things, and just calling me over and over and over again all night. And then he would have no recollection of it the next day. And I think it had to do with drinking. And then he was the world's greatest apologizer. I got so many bouquets of flowers over the course of that relationship. And I was going insane because I'd never been with somebody who was good at apologizing before. And I didn't understand what I was doing that was triggering this behavior by him. And I was going crazy because I wanted to end it, but I didn't want to end it. And I had a girlfriend who had been married already for maybe 10 years. And I remember her telling me that relationships are difficult, but they're not supposed to be that difficult. And I didn't know that. And that's what I mean about having friends who are models of happy long-term relationship, and they can give you context of what is normal and what is acceptable, because sometimes we're so deep in it we can't tell ourselves. And that, that was a good lesson for me.
So 2 minutes to go. So I guess my final thoughts are, work on getting deep relationships in your life, in your romantic life, in your friendship life. And I think it will serve you really, really well for the big picture. I think it will bring you happiness and harmony in the sense of, a sense of wellness and a sense of well-being, and, go after it.
Yeah.
Get a posse.
And you also get to adore your person and have differences and have areas of your life that you can't share, because I'm not into bone-breaking mixed martial arts and he's not into my political activism stuff. So
Yep.
You have your friends for that stuff so that it doesn't cloud the stuff that you share together. And we are wrapping up this episode of Crazy Sexy Midlife Love. Be sure to go to crazysexymidlifelove.com and join our Crazy Sexy Midlife Love family. Download Devin's book, Women Are Smarter Than Men and Other Secrets Marriage-Minded Women Need to Know. Join our mailing list so that you get alerted when we're doing something special that you want to be part of, like maybe an exciting episode or something else that might be really cool. Maybe, videos of our next wedding, or just to ask us questions that you would like us to answer on future episodes. And we will see you next week with a super guest, Dr. Roberta Shaler. Next week, yeah.
She's
right?
great.
She
Yeah.
is great. She's brilliant. And We are here every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific time at BBS Radio. Mwah.
Thank you for listening to Crazy Sexy Midlife Love. Please sign up to join our free love family at crazysexymidlifelove.com to get alerts to live shows, call in and ask questions, or just listen in. And ladies, don't forget to download Devin's free ebook, Women Are Smarter Than Men and Other Secrets Marriage-Minded Women Need to Know. Also available at crazysexymidlifelove.com.
Howdy, howdy.